we should bring.
We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Nick Barris, along with Tim Takis, elder law attorney. We talk about your elder care and estate planning and all of that at 737-7587. Getting a lot of calls this morning. Folks waiting through the break. Let's go to Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
Hey, how can we help you?
I have a question. I have a parent who doesn't even want to discuss the end of life care, and I was just wondering how to approach him about it, because I have 4 parents. 3 of them have already discussed our plans with me and my husband. My father refuses to discuss his end of life care, and even with all the health issues he's had within the last 2 years, he still doesn't want to discuss it.
What does he say? I'm just curious. When you bring it up, he just goes, honey, I just don't want to talk about it?
Yes, he does.
That's just it. And when you say, well, Dad, I mean, even the others have talked about it. I mean, don't you think?
Exactly. And he's in denial about it at this point.
Yeah. So how old is your father?
He is only 67.
67. Okay.
But he acts and he looks like he's 85.
Oh, okay.
So he has some health problems.
Yeah.
He does.
Right. Well, we were one of the things that we had a conversation about, Rebecca, I think during one of our breaks here is how you can start that conversation in a way that is respectful, and honors his wishes as to what he I mean, you're not going to pull it out of him, and if it's not a productive conversation if he's reluctant to do that, and so maybe part of that conversation could be maybe you and your husband should have that conversation with each other.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, she said she's married, so at some point when they're all together, they kind of sort of lay a little plans here. Okay,
it's
where
like a trap.
not a trap necessarily, but you never know. But okay, so Rebecca and her husband, start having this. They're talking about something or other, and then somebody brings up the end of life subject, and Rebecca goes, "Well, this is what I would want." And then her husband goes, "Are you serious? I didn't know that."
And Dad's listening to this,
and all this other stuff, and everything else. And I don't know. She may be, Rebecca and her husband may not be old enough to have adult children, but that might be help, even if.
Say, how would we? I don't know. I guess that's what we were talking about, is finding a way, Rebecca, to maybe get him to give you some advice.
Well,
but I just wonder, at some point too, if you've been trying, he's going to see through that. He's going to know what she's up to.
Well, sure, but that's why you don't really want to push that, because if Dad joins in, fine, but if he doesn't, then Rebecca and her husband may learn a little bit more about each other that maybe they didn't realize, and they could always ask him questions and say, well, what do you think? Or, and a lot of times, I'm thinking about that poor lady that, who was in who's in she's in the duo, and I can't remember, the country music duo, who's been diagnosed with cervical cancer, and she was
right, vocally here. That's difficult.
And it's like, I mean, who would have thought, for 2 or 3 years ago that she would, she and her husband would be in that situation.
It's never too late or early to start talking about. But let me ask you this:
that's sort of a conversation starter there. That regrettably, talking about something that's in the news.
Does he have a big estate or something that really is going to need to be dealt with, Rebecca? Or what happens if he just does nothing? I mean, I guess it'll just go to the family, right?
He has nothing, and I've tried to contact his brothers. His brothers live out of state, and it's just me and my mother, and my parents are divorced. So we've all tried to help. In fact, they've suggested that I call you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough. I mean, the strategy, and it varies from family to family depending on the person. But all right, let's just say, and maybe she hits him with this too. I mean, all right, so Dad, okay, we've come to the conclusion nothing is going to be done. You don't want to do anything about it. Which one? And she could guilt trip him and say, look, you're just being selfish because we're going to have to deal with this headache after you're gone.
Right.
But 2, if nothing is done, as you said before, let's just say nothing, and he passes.
Yes.
Then it doesn't sound like he has much of an asset. Is it that big a headache if nothing's there?
It may not be.
I mean,
but I think
it's not worth making him upset if it's not a big deal.
What Rebecca may be concerned about is that, maybe her father will get lucky, and he'll just have a heart attack and die real quick, even though he's in poor health now. But so an end of life decision won't need to be made for him. But end of life decisions are not necessarily all the decisions that need to be made. It's like, okay, if he goes to the hospital, which one? Does he want this treatment or that treatment? Maybe it's not like, okay, maybe it's not a question of, do you withhold or withdraw treatment, but it's like, what treatment is it going to be?
Yeah.
If he gets pneumonia, how aggressively should they treat him? Maybe that's not necessarily terminal, but if he's got other issues, then it could be. But does he want to be, because if he will be treated aggressively unless he makes unless he has other wishes.
Right. So maybe you put it to him like, Dad, you understand if you don't say anything here, it's gonna be this way. Maybe if you're brain dead, you want us to pull the plug, but if you don't, maybe you stay alive.
Right.
Things like this, that maybe he doesn't consider. He'll think about and
he
say,
might say, okay, that's if he says, well, that's fine with me, then she's learned something.
Yeah. Right. Right. Is it okay too sometimes if at least you've had these conversations and he's telling you these things but they're not written down, you still know them, and can you apply them when the time comes?
The good part about, at least in Tennessee, if not in other states, is that Tennessee has what's called a surrogate statute. And what that means is that if people don't have a health care power of attorney, then the hospital doesn't have to go, well, I guess we need to call the judge. They just, what they're allowed to do is they're allowed to look around to see, okay, is there a spouse? Are there children? Are there close friends? Are there significant others? So in other words, the physician or the provider can choose somebody. Okay. And the law says these are the categories that they look at. So it could wind up being Rebecca. If she winds up going to the hospital, and somebody comes out and says, "Are you the daughter?" And you say, "Yes." Yeah. Well, is there anybody else that would make a healthcare decision for him? And she would say, "No, there's no spouse. There's, I'm the oldest child, or my brother's in Alaska and he's not here and can't get here until next week."
So she's the one that makes the call.
And then so they'd say, okay, you're it, Rebecca. So she decides. Okay. Right? And if she decides, she just says, okay, this is what we're going to do. If she doesn't know what Daddy wants, then she decides.
If it gets to the point, too, where Daddy's on board, Rebecca, we'll have the number up for Tim at the end of the show to move forward. And again, I wish we could give you a magic wand that, just here's the answer to it all. And Tim does a great job of giving you options, but it varies from family to family. It's not an easy thing. Just so you know, you're certainly not alone. I'm dealing with the same headache, Rebecca. So just don't give up. Stick with it. Let's go next to Wilma. Hi, Wilma.
Yes.
Hi there. How can we help you, Wilma?
If you have a power of attorney and you decide you don't want that person for power of attorney and you get a new one, does that automatically cancel the one you had before?
No. She has to go in and kill the first one. Kill the guy, but
here's the thing to remember is that you can have multiple powers of attorney.
Oh, really?
I mean, there are people out there. Okay, maybe they live half the year in Michigan or Florida, half the year in Tennessee. And so maybe they have children or people in Michigan or people in whatever it is, and so you can do a power of attorney in any state and multiple ones. Okay. But typically what happens is, okay, she says, I don't want this person to be my power of attorney anymore. And so she makes a new one, and the new one revokes the old one. Okay. There's language in there that says...
So she needs to make sure that's done. She can't just go and open up a new one and let that other one not do anything
well, make
with it.
sure that make sure the new one says that it's been revoked.
Okay.
And make sure that she notifies the person who is her earlier power of attorney, oh, by the way, I've revoked my power of attorney, your power of attorney, and here's the new one.
Does that make sense, Wilma?
It does.
Why do you want to switch it? Do you have someone else in mind now?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there can be a lot of reasons for that, and that's entirely your right to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, and the main thing is that she has a written instrument that revokes it.
Yes,
but either that's the new power of attorney or a written revocation. You can actually do it. A separate document says, I revoke this power of attorney. So that's an option.
Where she would send him a registered letter on that?
Or just notify him somehow so that he knows. You know, that
Okay, that he's no longer,
He's
or
no
she's
longer-
no longer power of attorney, and they
Right.
move it to someone.
Right.
That's what you got to do, Wilma. Just make sure you, take care of the first one, and then choose your next person.
Okay, thank you very much.
You betcha. Thank you. And then you can have power of attorney again, not only for maybe having an attorney, power of attorney in different states, but what if you wanted to have a power of attorney, one individual to deal with your medical issues,
Yeah.
and another maybe to deal with some financial issues?
Sure, that happens all the time.
Separate. You can have more
Yeah.
than one for whatever reason. Maybe
Right.
one's just a
And
doctor
usually-
and the other's a financial
Well,
planner.
sir, in Tennessee, there are separate documents, literally, for health care. You know, as
Makes
to
sense.
as to financial and business and those sorts of things. And legal issues. So you can have a durable general power of attorney where you name your daughter to do this, and and then the son or the other daughter does health care.
Right.
Maybe because maybe the children or the family has divided up responsibilities, and mom and dad are the person that's what they all agree that's a good. A good separation of responsibilities, and so dad goes, I want my daughter to do this and my son to do that, and that's not unusual at all.
Okay, and is it difficult?
And we also want people to name successors or backups.
Oh, really?
Yes.
In case something happens to the individual you
Right.
had in mind,
Right.
that there's a backup plan.
Yes, and don't do it by committee.
Meaning, if this person can't, we'll have three
Well, no,
other
what I mean
people.
by that is don't do it by, I can't decide because I love all my children equally, so I'm going to name all 6 of them power of attorney for me.
That could be a nightmare.
Yes, it is.
And I bet that happens because they're not going to agree
Yeah.
on everything. And
Yeah.
wow, I bet that happens.
Years and years ago, when I first started doing this is what we're talking about back in the early 90s, I had that case where 2 daughters came in to see me, because their other sister, all 3 of them were powers of attorney for their dad.
And they didn't
and 2
agree?
sisters could not agree on what the third sister was doing, so guess what? They wound up in court.
There you go. Yeah, that creates a headache. So you've just got to find a way, and if it upsets some of the other siblings,
Well,
you're
I
gonna
always
have to
say
choose
is
one.
that blame me.
Yeah, blame me.
Blame the lawyer.
That's the convenient thing. See,
Yeah,
the
it says,
lawyer,
look, the lawyer
according to
said,
the
look, we have to, we want to name everybody. If you want to name all 6, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, in order of backups.
Yes,
But there's one first one.
Because the world out there wants somebody to speak with one voice.
Okay, so if you're, real quick, we just have less than a minute. If you're going to pick one of the 3 siblings,
yes.
what characteristic are you looking for?
Okay. Are they reliable? Are they available? Do they know what your wishes are?
Yeah. Trust me.
Are they willing to advocate, on your behalf?
Yeah.
Are they,
Those
are
are
they
just
suited
questions.
for the job?
I mean, they love their
It's a
parent.
job.
They're all going to want to advocate, but yeah, some sibling, maybe he's always busy with something else. You want someone who's going to be there, that's going to be reliable. Of course, you trust all 3 of them. They're your kids. But yeah, that.
And the thing to remember is
reliability and
that
looking
this is,
out for you.
being power of attorney or a healthcare agent for somebody is not a privilege. It's a job.
Yeah, it is. You don't get paid
and
for
you
it,
have
do
to
you?
pick. Yeah, and it's right. Usually don't.
But you're doing it because you hopefully love
right.
that individual and you're involved.
Right.
It's not
And
always a family member.
And you want to, and you pick the right person to do it.
Tim, as always,
All right,
fantastic
thank
advice.
you.
Thank you very
You're
much for
welcome.
coming on. Thank you
I
again
am,
for the
buddy.
wonderful treats from your lovely
Sure.
wife. And
Right.
When we come back,
Hopefully we'll
programming
have a
note
little-
about tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll have a little graphic of me
And
where
we'll
you can get a hold of me.
We'll
So-
do that. That's
okay,
coming up
great.
next.
Thank
Tim,
you.
have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too.
Be right back. Stay with us.